Welcome to our special meeting of Parks and Waterways, February 23rd, 2023. Time is 9 a.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks, Matari, and Duncan. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. What I want to remind folks, we need to leave at 9:50. We will need to excuse this meeting because we have a 10 o'clock meeting in the same room. And there are no decisions to be made today. It's just discussion items. And when our advisory board meets, it's very common to come before the board and talk about what has gone on in the advisory boards. So with that, our first item is Waterways Improvement Fund grant application. And we've got 3 sub-items under that. So I will turn it over to our chair, Doug Harris. Go ahead. You've got to push your button, your microphone. Yep. Perfect.
Thank you, Commissioner. As you stated, the purpose of the Waterways Board, we come and advise you about our last 2 meetings. We had one on December 8th and we had one on January 25th. And at the December 8th meeting, a group of citizens had submitted a written proposal to change the ordinances on the Spokane River as to the excessive wake and recommended some non-towing areas. The issue was just dismissed out of hand because the way it was written, we didn't like it, and was told to come back, and we had a special meeting on the 25th of January where we discussed that. And on that meeting, we actually had all 6 Parks and Waterway Board members were present. From the Sheriff's Department, Lieutenant Ellis, Sergeant Miller, Deputies Taw and Perkins, and we had 2 citizens as well at that meeting.
Sure. Mr. Harris, can we just stick to the first subtopics and then, because that's its own item next?
Okay.
And so this is the City of Coeur d'Alene Parks, 3rd Street mooring dock replacement, Spokane Point dock replacement, and a lot, KCSO boat electronics update.
All right. Every one of those folks came to the committee asking for grants, and all 3 were approved.
Oh, okay. Perfect. That was simple
Then
enough.
submitted to you.
Okay. Great. Okay, now we can move on to item 2.
Okay. All right. So at this meeting on the 25th, like I said, those were the people that were present, and Director Snyder was there as well from Parks and Waterway. Kootenai County Sheriffs had asked that the excessive wake ordinance be looked at and perhaps revert to the state law, which was easy, and they were looking for some consistency throughout the county. They also had recommended that there be no towing on the Spokane River, similar to what was on the Coeur d'Alene River, due to how busy the river has become. The board listened to that, and we agreed that the excessive wake ordinance needs to be relooked at, and we've come up with a motion which I can read to you, or I think it's been submitted to you from Nick.
You can read it just
Okay.
for audience sake.
And and before I get to that, one citizen did address the board, and he was in agreement with what the sheriff was looking for as well. And the proposed change is that the Parks and Waterways Advisory Board recommends that the county commissioners rescind Resolution 2021-63, and if applicable, 20-38, and add a 150-foot no-tow zone from any structured dock or shoreline on the Spokane River. This motion passed 5-1. A second motion was made to eliminate towing on weekends and holidays. That motion died for lack of a second. The board felt restricting any activity on the river, especially with specific times, just wouldn't be practical for the folks at this time.
Okay. All right.
Ask whoever's on, please.
Yeah, folks joining us by phone, would you mute yourselves, please? Okay, so is that your part of it?
That's my part of it, if you have any questions. And some of the board members are here.
Okay. Any questions for the advisory board?
No questions.
Oh, okay. Then I would ask a representative from the sheriff's office to come and.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sergeant Ryan Miller for the record. I did also submit to all of you a potential change to the ordinance as recommended by the Sheriff's Office. As Mr. Harris said, that one of the thoughts that we had during that meeting was due to the amount of congestion and looking at the public safety aspects, to potentially consider a no towing on the Spokane River like the Coeur d'Alene River. We understand that that's not a very popular way to look at things, so we're trying to take all different user groups in mind. So what we wanted to look at from a public safety standpoint was when were the most dangerous times, the most congested times to be on the river. What we found was Saturday and Sunday specifically, and then also on Fridays. Even following Mondays would probably be the next busy after that. But Saturday, Sundays, and Fridays being the most busy days of the week, and then the 4th of July specifically if it falls during a weekday. And then specific times we looked at were 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. as being the busiest times where people were out. 10 to noon is when the majority of the people decide to launch their vessels, especially Blackwell Island, which is one of the biggest boat launches affecting the river. 10 to noon is where I've personally seen that be a very busy boat launch. So you're putting a lot of vessels on the water at that time. So what the sheriff's office is recommending is the no towing on the Spokane River from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. And then in addition, the rest of the week, to get rid of the no excessive wake portion, and because that's a very confusing verbiage, change it to no towing from 100 feet to 150 feet. The existing no wake zone is already 100 feet on the river, so we just add the extra 50 feet, no towing. So no towing from 150 feet the rest of the time. And that is our proposal. I submitted it. It definitely has to go to an attorney if the board would like to consider this. It has not been to an attorney yet, so they would have to look at it and fine tune some of it.
All right, any questions for KCSO?
I'm just curious how a boater would know when they're 100 or 150 feet away. Is there going to be marked?
I don't know why, who keeps turning it.
Sorry. I'm just curious, how would a boater know that they're 100, 150 feet away from a dock when they're going down the river? Would there be a sign posted? Would there be some method for them to know?
So we definitely could look at posting signs to make it as clear as we possibly can. Currently, there's a lot of distances whether you're on a lake or a river that you have to be from a certain vessel or person or a dock or pier structure, and it's the obligation of the boater to know that. So there's many differences in what distance you're supposed to be in a given situation, and currently it would just be too much to post every single one of those. So we'll try to educate the best that we possibly can.
And how would you enforce that? I mean, how would you measure that person's distance?
So one of the techniques that a deputy would have is we have range finders that we have on board of a vessel. So what we would do in most situations is we would follow in behind their wake of where they were going and then get a reading from the shore. If it's right at 150 or if it's very close to that, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking at the more egregious violations it's posing a significant safety hazard.
Yeah. Okay.
And most of the violations that you observe, or potential violations, when you stop somebody, it's generally an educational stop, isn't it?
The majority of our stops are educational. Over the past few years, we started to track that, and it was 7% last year, and the year before was 9%, resulted in citations. It still is the most citations that we've ever seen in our area and the most in the state, and that's because of our population and how much activity we're just seeing increase out on the waterways. But yes, the majority of our stops are educational.
And I mean, if you pull up on an educational stop and smell beer,
Yes, sir.
then we get more involved.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the?
No other questions.
Okay. So if we were to go forward and look at some of these things, would you say that if we just started with Saturday and Sunday, would that be a step in the right direction for the no towing?
The official position of the sheriff's office is that the times and the days that we stated are the busiest that we see. We would strongly recommend that it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. But that is the recommendation that we are putting to the board. That's just the busiest days and times that we see.
Okay.
What days, I know we have some record of accidents, whether they're serious or not. Which days are the most accident prone?
Just your weekend days. I don't have them broken down of what day of the week specifically, but we do know Friday or Saturday and Sunday are going to be the busiest, and then your Fridays. And that's just when we're seeing the most boaters on the water during that time.
Thank you.
And how many teams will you have out this summer?
We currently don't have those numbers. We're going through the hiring process right now. We only have 6 in backgrounds as of now. The rest have not been chosen to continue. So we have 6. So at the very most, that would be 3 teams if all of them made it. And it is very unlikely that all of them will make it. So we will be severely understaffed this year.
Okay, and let's just be hopeful. Out of the 6 teams, so you have 6 full-time to go with the Marine deputy designation.
Yeah, it would be 6 people, so 3
3
teams.
teams, okay.
Correct.
So you don't
Best
have
case.
any full-time to match those.
We have 1 full-time deputy trawl, so I'm down 1 full-time Marine position. And because of what patrol's seeing right now and the detention side, we will not be getting supplemented from them this year.
Gotcha. All right. All right, I would ask Director Snyder for his thoughts on the matter since he's been here 15 years and seen all kinds of activity there.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nick Stein for the record. Well, Parks and Waterways doesn't usually weigh in on enforcement-related things, but as the board's aware, I've been involved in all the discussions and over the last 2 years on this subject, and I spent some time after the Waterways Advisory Board meeting and reading the KCSO's recommendation, and I have a little bit of a hybrid to that, and ultimately, you know, the board will pick what's best, but these are our official thoughts on it. In an effort to strike a reasonable balance between safety and protecting the interest of our citizens, having rights to both recreate and reside excuse me, on the public waterway, as well as provide KCSO with a clear and concise tool to enforce rules, I would advise the Boulder County Commissioners to consider adopting a new ordinance with the following language. Starting with rescinding the excessive wake, it does seem that that's at least for most people, seem to agree that it's a bit confusing and it's not working as the county had hoped. So with that said, I would recommend no towing on Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 6, beginning June 1st of each year, ending on the Tuesday following the Labor Day weekend, and no towing all day on the 4th of July. As to the distance, Commissioners, it's really not our place to get involved. Sergeant Miller can speak to Idaho code. There's already distance in code that he can speak to, but you know how they do their job is not appropriate for us to weigh in on distance. But I would say that those times I think strikes a good balance. Friday is questionable. Sergeant Miller and his team spend a lot of time observing, so certainly I would give that some weight. But I think starting with Saturday and Sunday is a good step forward in this particular situation. And we appreciate the time that KCSO is involved in this. And I'd like to say for the record that KCSO did a fantastic job last year. They don't have a lot of resources on the river. It's very difficult to recruit. And so hats off to them for what they can do. I want to remind the board and everybody here that there are 18 lakes and rivers in Kootenai County. And KCSO has an enormous job to try and patrol all those, and there's other bodies of water that need some attention. So hopefully they can recruit and give those folks some other attention. But I'm concerned about their having the resources they need to really be able to enforce this along with everything else. I think the community needs to give them some slack when it comes to this. One OUI or a boat accident takes a lot of their resources immediately off the water. So something to think about as we move forward. They're not going to be able to do all things on all waterways, and I think they've been asked to do that, and that's just not very reasonable. Commissioner Matari, we're happy to post any new rules the board adopts for the river. We'll do our best to make it as clear as we can from Cedars all the way to the Spokane Bridge. So we'll do what we can if there's some change, but I do think there's some change needed. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Nick? Okay. So we can take this under advisement and decide to address it at a later meeting. We can choose to make it a public hearing or just a public meeting. There's no requirement for this ordinance change to be a public hearing. Obviously, it has to be done in a public meeting, though. So you guys can consider what you want to do from there. Thoughts?
I don't know. I think the more formal we can make it, the better,
Okay.
to move along in the process.
Okay, so you would suggest a public hearing where we hear from hundreds of people?
Well, I don't like it, but I think we should do it.
Okay. Bruce?
Yeah, I do believe it's a safety issue. I've spent a fair amount of time on the river myself, just with personal watercraft, and I do believe that it is a congestion issue for sure. I've spent a lot of time as well on the shore, just kind of watching the boats. I've been out on a wake boat as well to have someone show me how the wake dissipates over distance and how much distance is required. I suspect that whatever we come up with, we may have to even revisit it maybe one more time until we get it perfect as we can get it. But it might be prudent just to make sure that the public can weigh in, I think.
All right.
So,
I've just been here for 4 years, and I've heard plenty of public weigh-in.
Yeah.
So I have a good finger on the
Yeah.
pulse. So I don't feel like a public hearing would be necessarily a public meeting, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's just where I stand. But if the two of you want a public hearing, we can schedule that.
I'm almost to a point where half the people are unhappy and half the people are happy, and
Yeah.
that I would prefer not to either even consider this again, because we've spent so much time on it.
Sure. So the other aspect is enforcement. So with a lack of enforcement, it doesn't really matter what we do because people behave when the cops are out there and not so much when they're not. So we need to definitely consider that. Nothing will ever be perfect. You will never make everybody happy. And so I prefer to take a slower approach, a less regulated approach, and let people be responsible for themselves. And so I definitely want to revisit this and definitely want to rescind the poor language that I never voted for the last two ordinances. And so I'm definitely in favor of that. But we don't have to make a decision today whether we want a public hearing or not. I would suggest the folks in the audience and the folks listening and who watch this video later that they would submit written comments to us via email. That would be very helpful. That helps us organize our thoughts and a way to move forward. So let's see. That's kind of where I'm falling right there. Then I would say, do you want to hear from anybody in the audience today?
Today, yes, I think we should.
Okay. All right.
Short.
So comments
Yes.
will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will address the board. We're not addressing personalities or people. You're addressing issues to the Board of County Commissioners. Okay. And 3 minutes. So go ahead. Okay, hang on 1 second. I'll get to the people on the phone. We're going to do people in person first. Okay. So you can also stand at the podium if you want.
the podium right over there.
Push the button.
Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Jim Stafford. I'm the president of the Spokane River Association and also a member of River Friends. And a couple of points that I would like to make is that we had been promised a report from the Sheriff's Department on the activities last year about how many tickets they got, what happened, and yada, yada, yada. And all we get is a lot of rumors. And so now there's a lot of rumors floating around about what the Sheriff's Department did and didn't do. So I think it would be helpful if the sheriff would issue the report that he had promised to do, number one. Number two is safety is the major concern, and environmental damage of the excessive wakes on the river. We need to, whatever you guys go forward on, need to focus on those particular items. The city is now in the process of putting on 52 more commercial docks available for rental that will be operational sometime next summer. That's going to add 50 boats a day to the river of people that aren't educated and don't know what they're doing. So that's going to add more safety issues to the river. And we continue to build homes on the river that also have docks. Right now, the sheriff didn't enforce the current regulation. One, lack of manpower, lack of desire, because he doesn't agree with it.
So
yeah.
I'm sorry, sir. Those statements, I can't, they're not backed up by fact. So I would appreciate
If you'd like the facts, I have the written facts. We've been through this before.
Okay.
He put in writing that he wasn't going to enforce it.
Okay,
He
but
did.
let's just keep it to your issues, please.
Okay, so the issue is the safety and excessive wakes. Doing it on piecemeal, I don't understand. I understand something is better than nothing, okay? But if you're going to make the change, you're going to, I personally, not a recommendation from my membership, but my personal recommendation is you go no towing on the river because it's inevitable. We've already had one major accident at the end of 2021 where someone was almost killed. If those boats had not been on the river, that would not have happened. And you're just waiting to have another accident. And so I think you guys need to belly up to the bar. I don't like it. I live on the river. I use the river. But I think moving to no towing on the river completely, for me personally, is the correct answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Yes, sir.
My name is John Stanley, and I have a cold, so sorry about that. I was a law enforcement officer for the Spokane Police Department for 32 years, retired in 2004. And then I run commercial boats on the river and for Gazer and for Templins when they had the River Queen. So I've seen all kinds of things on the river. We live on the river, and we use it. Last year, my wife and I water skied, 55 days. The year before that, it was 65 days. So towing on the river for us is important. And water skiing is different. We do surf also with friends. So the activity is it's a public river, and the public has the right to use the river. I understand the safety aspects and problems with the Sheriff's Department trying to enforce some of that because of the ambiguity of the laws. But the reality is it's their choice to do and make the enforcement that they want to make. A lot of it is by sight. That you ask about distance. It's like speed is the same thing. They have to make a judgment call on the speed of a boat. It's limited to 35 miles an hour. Some of those boats are way over that, and they have to make a vision call on it and whether or not to cite that person. So I think they do the best job they can out there. I don't think the public misbehaves on purpose. A lot of it is ignorance. But the reality of it is that it is a public waterway, and it's only usable for about 3 months out of the year. 9 months it's fast flowing, flushes itself out, and it's not safe to boat on it because of the logs and the debris. So you're talking about just 3 months out of the year. 9 months, people get total quiet on the river. So I would just admonish the commissioners to not listen to the small interest groups. I would like nobody to be on it so I can ski on it with fresh water. So, I mean, it would be, the mirror water for us in the morning. We go at 6 in the morning sometimes because it's the best time to ski for us. So I have an interest in no wake at all for anybody. But I do like to ski and tow and be towed on the river. And I'm hoping that the commissioners will just listen to the reality, listen to your experts, the Waterways, the Sheriff's Department, and react just to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sherry Schofield, and I live on the river as well. I totally agree with that gentleman because we have the right to use it. My question is, do we know how many Washington boats are there versus Idaho boats? Because I wish there was some way we could figure out and somehow regulate. Idaho should be able to tow on that river, not Washington. And I don't know who was involved in the accident where someone was close to being killed or injured very badly, which is terrible. I'd be interested to know if that was Washington boats or Idaho boats. But I think that's something we need to think about, is maybe if Washington is going to use our rivers and lakes, then they need to go out to the lake then, or something, because I disagree with shutting down the river. And it was very confusing, the description of the new amendment to that, whatever it's called. Because does that mean absolutely no towing? I mean, I think that would not be a wise way to regulate the river at this point. Thank you. Thanks
you.
everybody for all their work.
Hi.
Everybody on the phone, we have 2 more in person, and then I'll get to the phone folks, okay? So hang on just a minute, please.
Hi, I'm Scott Schofield, the husband of Sherry Schofield. I have 2 things. One is because I know I attended that before, the environmental erosion part of it. I think in its totality, it's a farce. And the reason why I state that is because we live down across from Templin, so we're a full no-wake zone. And when I spoke last time, I spoke on behalf of a neighbor who's been there a lot longer than we have. And where our property is, we're kind of on an island, and so we have a canal that runs in between our properties. And he basically stated from the time he's bought there to the time we moved, I think he's probably been there 15, 20 years. Well, the canal is eroding into where his sprinkler lines are exposed now. So where are the surf boats? Where are the wake boats? There's no boats in there that are creating any type of egregious wake. And also, from where our property is too, since we're back in kind of a little cove, we get runoff that comes down from the mountain that comes down. Well, we actually have it's kind of nice during the winter because that area drains out for the dam control, right? Well, we have actually a stream that kind of runs through from the runoff. Well, it's getting deeper. There's no boats in there. And so I think that in totality, the erosion, and then when a vista is, lowering the water, I think the number was something like 22,000 cubic feet per second that they're bringing that water level down. Maybe a part of it would be is slow that down or extend the periods to where it's not moving as fast, because I think that's probably more where the erosion is coming than the boat activity. The other part I like to bring up is that Parks and Recreation changed the buoys that we had down in that area to circular, and then have like a little beeping light on top. But the signage, the wording on the signage is terrible, because we're still getting from Quinlan all the way out to where you just pass Templin, and there's like 4 buoys there that tell you no wake zone. We got boats still racing. We got jet skis racing. We've even had some that are towing inner tubers or skiers that have, and the poor gal that has to run the marina there, I mean, because we're right across, so we hear it all the time. She's just, this is a no wake zone. And it's not working with the type of, it was actually better when the buoys that were there were the round circular ones that were a lot taller, because those buoys kind of look, when you start getting around and you come to Greens Ferry where the buoys are the same and it's basically a hazard zone, that's how they're highlighted there. I'm wondering if there's some confusion, is that maybe the boaters are thinking it's the same type of buoy.
Sure. Sorry, I have to cut you off.
Yeah.
Your 3 minutes are up, but I appreciate your comments on that.
Okay,
And
great. Yeah, thanks.
Laura? Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, good morning. Rebecca Stevens, Coeur d'Alene Tribe. Thank you, Commissioners, KCSO, and the Director's Office for this very important issue. First and foremost, safety is an issue. We want to prevent those accidents, but hopefully you all are aware of the Governor Little's initiative with Leading Idaho and the Coeur d'Alene Lake Advisory Committee that are working on nutrient reduction projects. And I think that any no-wake zones and any protections we can apply to our riverbanks and our lake shores is going to benefit the governor's effort as well as the findings of the National Academy of Sciences and how we can all be better stewards of our waterways. So I just want to thank you for your work on this matter, and hopefully you can come to a resolution. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, I'll take some on the phone. This is going to be a little chaotic because I'm not sure how many of you there are. So I do know that, Randy, are you still on the line, and did you want to speak?
Yeah, I could just speak briefly if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say that the existing ordinance is too restrictive, and it doesn't make sense. The prosecutor doesn't want to try to prosecute it in court because they know it doesn't make sense. It also works to restrict inactivity. If wakes were the issue, then we would restrict large cruisers like the president of the Friends of River owns that weigh more than a wakeboat weighs. But we don't do that because we're not trying to restrict an activity. People should just be responsible for themselves, and dangerous people shouldn't be allowed on the river. We all agree to that. The major accident that was referred to, it refers to a jet ski accident. It actually went over the large wake of a cruiser boat, and then a wake boat couldn't see them because of the large wake of the cruiser boat. And that's all according to a live witness who I believe is in the audience right now. So in conclusion, we just do not believe that this old ordinance should be there. The existing ordinances that we had for years and years served us well, and we believe in and trust KSO and their judgment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Edward, did you want to speak?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I have Edward and Susan Kent on the line now. We're Post Falls on the Spokane River. I would like to have an evidence-based rule and regulation that would be enforced on a consistent basis. The 100-foot limit has got no evidence behind it to support it. At a minimum, it should be 150 feet. Most waterways go 500 feet for the obvious reasons that you don't allow tanks on a highway. And so much force, so much power with these wake boats today. We installed reinstalled a floating dock earlier this summer, and we had to replace it with a permanent dock because the floating dock was going down up and down 4 feet, and it was going to snap the pier, and frankly, it scared the dickens out of us. But I would wish that we had consistent enforcement. I do believe a 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. No towing from for all of the days of the week. It makes most sense. It's consistent. But at the end of the day, the 150-foot limit, I think, would be the right thing to do. Ski boats really aren't the problem. When you look at force and you look at the waves and the translation to force, we've got fractured rock along the river. We're seeing it take a pounding. We're going to lose several of our cliffs next to us very soon because of that fractured rock being just pounded every day with these wake boat waves that come across. And so I did hear from even the boating people when they replaced our dock with a permanent dock, Cam Fathom, that we aren't getting enforcement. We asked for enforcement. We called every day that when we saw excessive wakes, we didn't see any of that enforcement happening, and we were told with our folks at the Airbnb that were renting, and we had informed them that they had excessive wakes. We were told that the excessive wakes wasn't being enforced. We could tell that because, frankly, as the season went on, there was pretty good traffic and reduction in activity of excessive wakes as the season went on. The boaters knew when the sheriff was going to be out, and the boaters also knew that they weren't enforcing. And so I would just encourage evidence-based rules and regulations enforced on a regular basis, and we take into account the environment. We live in a very beautiful area. The fractured rocks, are important to us, and again, I think the ski boats really aren't the problem. It's the wake boats. It's the tanks that are going on our rivers every day. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your comments. And Debbie Roos?
Hi. I want to say hello to all of my new neighbors because I am now today, as of today, closing on a house in Post Falls. So I had no idea about all of this consternation that was going on the river. We're looking forward to using it and hope that there aren't any restrictions. This is, all news to me, and I'm sorry. I grew up in Wisconsin, and to drive a boat in Wisconsin, we had to have a personal water safety license, and maybe that's the direction. Maybe it's education, and there would be enforcement of, do you have your boating license? And that would be my suggestion, is education and less restriction. And as the gentleman who had a cold said earlier, there's so few months of the year that this river is actually used that the erosion probably is not being caused by the boats. And I hope that we have a lot of enjoyment on the river this summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on the telephone? All right. Hearing none, then I would take the audience again. Anybody else in the audience? Okay. Any comments? Okay. All right, folks. Well, then 9:36 and meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.